we had 14 pitchers on staff, 13 of which were drafted, including a first, a second, a fifth, and a seventh rounder. And they were all like 92, 94. And then the one guy that we had that showed up that was like 88, 90, left 95, 97, and eventually hit 100.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 10 of ITTV. Today's guest is Demetre Kokoris. And before we get into that, I don't want to forget any of the things that I need to get to first. Like, I don't usually introduce myself. So for those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Scott Haase. I'm the pitching coordinator with the Indiana Twins, and I'm also on the board. Been with these guys for about 5 or 6 years now, so that is who I am. Like I said, we'll get to Demetre. But also, if you need to follow us, like I think you should, we are at Indiana Twins everywhere across the board, just making it simple. On YouTube, you can also follow us there, subscribe to our channel. It's just type youtube.com/Indiana Twins. And if you have any email questions or anything like that, you want to reach out to us, you can just do indianatwins@gmail.com. So keeping it pretty simple. I do want to do a special shout out I might have to pull it up. Oh, right here. To one of our sponsors, Sunbelt Rentals. Unfortunately, with the pandemic and everything going on right now, our sponsors, it doesn't look like they're sponsoring us because there's no fields that are being played on right now, although we had their signs and everything. So appreciate Sunbelt Rentals for being a proud sponsor. And then I just want to get a little kind of an overview of what we're going to talk about with Demetre today. For those of you that are listening in, and I know we've got our young bucks on Instagram Live, that your attention span, I see you going in and out of there. And so if you want to usually these last about an hour. So with that in mind, we're going to go over Demetre's background. We're going to get right into pitching for those of you that are just itching to talk pitching. We're going to talk recruiting for you high school guys. And then we're going to get into coaching. So we've got a lot of our coaches watching this. And then we'll end with some Q&A. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and shoot them in Instagram Live or on Facebook. I've got that over here on my computer. Make sure I pull that up. So randomly throughout the show, I might see those questions and pull them up. With that said, or without further ado, Demetre, let's hear a little bit about your coaching and baseball background, if you would.
Yeah, I was actually a student manager in college at the University of South Carolina. Knew that I wanted to get into college. At that time, I thought I wanted to be in professional baseball. So I was around a really good program. We went to the College World Series my freshman and sophomore year. And then junior and senior year were, regional, super regional, but did a little bit of time internship in professional baseball after college. Felt like I needed to go back to the college game, like that was my calling, and ended up at Cal State Fullerton and was a grad assistant there from 07 to 09, where we went to the College World Series in both 07 and 09. And then while I was there, really good relationship with our head coach, George Horton, who got picked by the University of Oregon to resurrect their baseball program from scratch. And so went up there, kind of an administrative assistant, bullpen coach role. And then it was time for me to kind of go out on my own and figure out what I knew. So I spent 3 years at a junior college in Oregon by the name of Chemeketa. And that was during that time, did a lot of stuff at the Texas Baseball Ranch, whether it's their pitching coaches boot camps or flew out and observed there. And that's where I met a young, ambitious man by the name of Kyle Bodie. He spoke there, and Kyle was in Seattle and I was in Salem, and a really good friendship started, and he started Driveline Baseball. And Kyle and I kind of grew in that department. As Kyle put out more blogs and information, I jumped on it and really applied it and figured out where that stuff was. And then my family is back in Southern California. I'm actually in Pasadena right now, and did some good things at Chemeketa and got an opportunity to coach junior college baseball at Santa Barbara City College. Did that for 2 years. And then for about a year and a half, 2 years at Point Loma Nazarene University D2. And so did that. And then some things happened, went out to Lincoln Memorial University in Tennessee, and I got a call from the Blue Jays at the end of our fall. And that's where I am now, having just completed my first year with them. And I'm in month 4, April of year 2, as the short season A-ball affiliate pitching coach in Vancouver. And so it's been It's been fun. It's been quite a journey. You can't script this out. The journey, the road that I took, but I had two big rules. I followed, first and foremost, I want to be surrounded by good people, people that have high moral standards. And then second off, I want to surround myself with people or be by people who are competent, who possess a skill set and that I can learn from. So that's kind of how something like that takes place.
Yeah. So I was already impressed with your resume before I knew all of it, to the extent of it. I didn't know that you were also working and shadowing at Texas Baseball Ranch and some of those other things. I was listening to a podcast, and the success of the guys that got drafted at Oregon was ridiculous. You want to tell people about that real quick?
Yeah. So when I showed up at Oregon, kind of, like I said, we were kind of resurrecting that program, and we got a pitching coach, guy by the name of Andrew Checketts. And Checketts is a really good eye. He's the head coach now at UC Santa Barbara. And he's got a really good eye for identifying players. And we got a bunch of dudes that were like 86 to 88. And that was the first year of the program, 2009. And then by the time 2011, we had 14 pitchers on staff, 13 of which were drafted, including a first, a second, a fifth, and a seventh rounder. And they were all like 92, 94. And then the one guy that we had that showed up that was like 88, 90 left 95, 97 and eventually hit 100. So yeah. It was an eye opener. It's the first time I saw weighted balls used, and that's what turned me on to the Ron and the Texas Baseball Ranch, which led me to Driveline and Kyle Bodie. And so, but yeah, I firmly say that Andrew Checketts that year, he ruined my life for the next 4 years because he showed me what was possible. He showed me that you could take kids from 86, 88 and get them to 92, 94 in 3 years. And when he left for UC Santa Barbara and I went to Chemeketa, that's what I was chasing because I knew it was possible.
Jeez. Yeah, so not only was I already impressed and humbled by how we met, but then you throw even more and add your resumes that get to know you more and listen to some of your stuff. So originally, Demetre had reached out to me, which is usually the other way around with guys that have any notable accolades of any kind on Twitter. He had saw that I went out to Driveline, where Kyle Bodie, started out in Kent, Washington, and they had an online or a certification for pitchers or pitching coaches. So it's a pitching foundations of pitching course. I started last year. I believe it was in August. I can't remember right now, but do you remember when that was?
It was in the middle of the season, so about August. Yeah.
Okay.
It was
July, August.
July, August. One of those two. I'm 100. Yeah, because I was still in Vancouver.
Yep. So went out, did that, had a great experience. And Demetre reached out to me on Twitter and was like, hey, the Blue Jays organization, it's kind of looking at this. I'm kind of interested in this. Want to hear some more information about it. Just kind of, how was your experience? Everyone's just kind of wondered, and you're one of the few guys that, we know that went to it. So
yeah,
extremely humbled that you had reached out to me.
Yeah. Glad I made that call. I was very, on the other side of that phone, I was super impressed. You sound like, clearly a highly organized individual who's, I was shocked. You just had so much like high quality knowledge. Like you had been to a lot of different things. You could compare it to other high profile, high quality information. And it was like, how does this guy exist in Indiana? Like, this is amazing. This is awesome. Like I got jealous. So yeah.
Well, if I could have your resume, I'd be much happier. But anyway, so I had some other questions, but we talked about this beforehand, and I was like, hey man, is there anything that you want to talk about, anything that you just are itching to talk about? And he said, ask me this question. So I'm going to ask him this question because I don't know the answer yet. I don't think I'll ever know the answer, but I don't know his answer. So the question is, Demetre, what is the most important thing to a player's success?
I've seen, in my experience, what I've seen without a shadow of a doubt, it's ownership by the player. It's the player's drive and want to get better, and it's their understanding that it's their career and it's their responsibility, and they have to go out and they have to find a way to make it happen. The guys that I see that take things personally, so to speak, or that are relentless in their pursuit of information and apply that, and they don't wait for a coach to come and give it to them, or they don't wait for something to be handed to them, those are the guys that, if they don't start off as good, end up turning themselves into something special. And as a coach, those are the guys who are really a joy to be around, because they also make everybody around them better too, because everybody observes how they're going about their business and latches onto that. So I would say in my experience, the number one indicator of success is player drive, player ownership, player determination, and them taking it upon themselves to become great and not waiting for somebody else to do it for them.
I definitely think that could go for literally every human on the face of this planet. Like,
right.
That's fantastic advice. I'm going to clip that up. I told you before, I'm going to save some of the stuff I can send to you. You should have that on your resume, just that video clip right there.
Right. And then I will say there's like a 1% of guys that are just stupid talented. Don't get fooled by those guys. Don't get, like, it's like less, it's like a half of a 1%. Like, don't get fooled by that. Like,
yeah,
those are
having a conversation with them. Will
yeah,
you'll figure it out. Yeah. All right. So back into our regularly program, because we had to get to that one. And I think it's just going to set us up really well for the rest of the questions. So, and I actually want to add to this one. So I wanted to ask, kind of with your background, what's something that has shaped your career kind of in each of those stages? So let's start with college. What's one thing that it just kind of started to shape your career, your baseball knowledge a little bit more just while you were coaching in college?
So I will say this, when I was in South Carolina as a student manager, it was such a phenomenal foundation. It was the bar. It ended up being the bar that was set for me. So everything that I saw there, I just thought was normal. And this is a program that had lived in Omaha and that went on to win 2 College World Series shortly after I left. And the way that it was run, the way that you go about your business day to day, the way that you train, the intensity that you train in, the amount that they hit, the amount that they threw, the amount that they were able to execute off secondary stuff, like that was just normal for me. And that was just the bar. And looking back, it was a huge blessing. And then to be under Coach Tanner and the way that he ran his program, it was professional. It was top notch. So that was huge. The funny thing about South Carolina back then, if you look back on it, we threw a lot of off-speed pitches and we hit a lot of home runs. So it was like money. It was like the new age of baseball, but that was 15, 16 years ago. So
was that just coaching? Was it player personnel just kind of determine that, or?
It was coaching. It was what Coach Tanner wanted. He wanted to be able to go yard 1 through 9. He wanted us to have the ability to leave the yard and just rattle somebody. And then with the way that the SEC was, with the strength of the players and the high caliber of hitting talent, you just forcing contacts was probably going to result in some crooked numbers. And so if you could avoid contacts with some smaller yards and the ball flying the way it did and some really superior athletes strength-wise, if you could just avoid contact altogether, that was a big benefit.
That makes sense. So when we talk about, seeing the guys at the different training facilities like Driveline, like Texas Baseball Range, what were the big takeaways, or what one big takeaway from that kind of started to shape your career as well?
So I thought Texas Baseball Ranch did a really good job of laying down kind of a foundation, whether it's the Bernstein principle, how kind of your intent to move kind of drives your body's ability to self-organize and then deliver the task. So what that means is, like, if you want to move a certain way, just like if I want to throw in a certain way, like all I have to do is think I need to hit a target 100 feet down, and then my body will figure out how to move. I don't have to like consciously think about what my arm's doing or things like that. I just need to get out of my own way, focus on that target, and then throw and try to hit that target. And so now it was our job with the said principle or Wolff's Law or things of that nature to evolve the anatomy to be a superior anatomy to execute and to throw and hit that target with force and velocity. So what I mean by that is, like, if you want to throw hard, be strong. If you want to throw accurately, throw under control. And sometimes you have to make these adjustments in your body in order to get stronger, or in order to have more core strength, or whatever it is, to have more control of your body. And so that was a good foundation. And then Driveline did a really good job of rolling out programs, rolling out actual throwing programs and drills that could be applied during the course of the week, and how to prescribe those, and then how to clean up different throwing inefficiencies or anatomical constraints. And then you could put a constraint drill on there, and that would create so like if your glove side was bad, then you could do this pivot pickoff throw and it would be able to clean up your glove side without you having to think about it. Just executing of the drill was able to really clean things up. And so I thought that was really, really beneficial for them.
Yeah. What's been the biggest takeaway from Pro Ball?
Pro Ball has been, my first year was definitely really like look and listen. You have superior athletes and they're there and they've had success to get there. So you really got to build relationships first and foremost before you kind of get in there. And I've actually taken a lot from Lance Wheeler, which is asking questions and how to ask questions and what questions to ask. So I know you got Lance on later this week. I'll definitely be watching that one. But it's don't make assumptions. There is this thing we talk about, which is like verbal terrorism. So if I say stay back to a pitcher and I say stay back to 10 pitchers, it could mean 10 completely different things to 10 guys. So it's my responsibility as a coach to find out what does stay back mean. And if he doesn't know what stay back means, educate him as to what I'm talking about when I say it so that we can speak a common language. And so if it's more effective for me to use his terminology, I'll do that. If he doesn't have terminology, then we can get on the same page and go forward. But I want to make sure I'm speaking in a language he understands. And that takes a lot of time and drawing out of a guy with questions.
Absolutely. The key that I think this week is going to be, and it started last week with all of our guys at the pro ranks, communication. And we're going to touch back on that when we bounce back into coaching at the end. But I know the guys on Instagram, there's only a few of them right now, so they probably already gotten out and said he's not talking pitching yet. So let's get into pitching. I heard you in a different podcast, maybe it's an article, you talked about the body delivering the baseball. I really like how that's said, but I know there's guys that have no idea what that means, let alone how it can be trained. So talk more about the body delivering the baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. So throwing is a full body. It's a full body exercise. And if you do it correctly, the bigger muscles in the body, like the proximal pieces, and that's just a fancy term for like your pelvis or your hips, your spine or your trunk and your shoulders, those are going to ride down the mound and initiate the rotation. And then as those rotate, so your hips are going to go, then your shoulders are going to go, and then your arm's going to go kind of like a whip. And so your body really delivers your arm. And the sequencing of those bigger pieces first is really, really important. And if you can learn how to control those pieces and fire them at the right time with the rest of your body, your arm is just going to kind of go along for the ride. It's going to be like a whip. And when your hips go and your shoulders go, right at the end, there's some explosion with your arm known as elbow extension. And that's what's really delivering the ball as your hand, if you want to get into semantics, like it pronates or it turns to deliver the baseball. And then everything is just a deceleration process or protecting your arm and slowing it down. But it really is, it's your body that delivers the arm. It's your body throws the baseball. And I think of those bigger muscles as the engine. And then your arm is just a whip, nice and loose, being carried along for the ride. And its job is to sequence or to fire right at the end, right at the right time. No sooner, no later.
Yeah. And then the next question is a yes or no.
Sure.
So usually this isn't a good interview question, but it's a yes or no question. Can, in a holistic way, the body delivering the baseball be trained?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe it has to be. I think, in my opinion, and this is all observational, this is all things that I believe from observation. When I watch kids throw, little kids, it's all arm. It's just all arm, which is fine. That's what they need to train. It's just elbow extension, almost like a dart right at the target. And then kind of as you grow, you get more strength and you get more proprioception or, awareness or coordination of the rest of your body. And then your body starts syncing up and delivering it. So I think initially when I see kids throw, like it's all arm. And then as they get older, it's a little bit more here. And then kind of as you get older, I think you unlock more and more pieces of the kinetic chain or more pieces of your body that need to sync up to throw the ball more efficiently or with more power. And so I think it's your responsibility as you get older to kind of figure out, all right, what am I what new part of my body can I discover this year? And how can I sync that up with my arm and with throwing to help me get this better, to become a more efficient thrower?
So let's talk about that proprioception, so that body awareness, that feel. So talk more about kind of what it is and normalize it for the people that have never heard this big P word, proprio what? And then how can you teach proprioception? Why is it important?
Yeah, proprioception, or the other scary word is kinesthetic awareness. It's just like feel for your body. It's and the best way that I can personally talk about it is like, I didn't really discover my body until I was like 24, and I went to a yoga class where me and a buddy, we were like 24. We went to this hot yoga class on a Saturday morning for some unknown reason. And I remember when they were saying,
hot yoga's legit.
It's unbelievable. I still do it to this day.
Yeah.
But they were saying things that, like, you know, how to like balance on the outer part of your foot, or lift your leg with your thigh, or like slide your hip upwards. And it was just kind of like, whoa, I have totally not used my body to its fullest extent. I didn't even realize I was able to control, you know, these pieces. And so that's kind of my personal experience to like how I really got full body awareness and introduction to that. And so proprioception is kind of like that awareness, that body, that feel for your body. It's that it's what leads to like coordination. So if you've got more feel for your body, each individual piece, how it moves, how it wants to operate, then you can start syncing that up when you go to throw. You can get more feel, like, oh, that was out of sync. Hey, that feels like it didn't fire at the right place. Or, hey, when I did that, it kind of hurt. Okay, I don't want it to hurt. I should do something different. And so building that proprioception gives you more feel or more awareness to your body, and it's able to help you guide yourself through your movements.
Yep. Have you, or people that you've worked with, or players you've worked with, or just that you've seen, have you found a good way to teach, whether it's just general proprioception or specific to pitching or anything like that?
Yeah, I think, I'm going to go with my personal answer, go take a yoga class. But I think there's different ways to deliver it with different parts of the body. Like something that I've really liked recently is for guys to feel connection with the ground, throw barefoot.
Yes.
Like throw barefoot. For guys, feeling your arm, if you really want to feel what that's like, weighted balls. I think that there's a big benefit in weighted balls, where the heavier the implement, the more, or the heavier the ball, or the heavier the thing that you're throwing, the more muscles that need to be recruited or involved in the throw for the body. So when you go to throw a heavier ball, you're actually able to feel more things in your arm. So I think throwing a weighted ball is a really, really good way of doing that. Lower half, I think dry work. You know, a lot of dry work, whether on a slope where you cross your arms and you just go through the lower half of your delivery. And I think that allows you to really kind of feel out your lower half and feel out different parts, and then experiment with it. Go up on your toe a little bit more, go up on your heel a little bit more, get deeper into your glute, get more up in your quad, like do different things and really kind of feel that stuff out. What else?
I mean, that's perfect, because right now with everyone being home, that's something you can start doing, right? Take shoes off. If you don't have a slope, I'm looking in my garage right now at a little itty bitty step that's probably the elevation of the ground. You can step down, and I've never actually done dry work without my arms, and I really like that.
Super easy. Yeah. Just cross that. Stole that one from Nate Yeske, who's now down at the University of Arizona, where he had him either go underneath. You either tuck your hands into your armpits and go, or you just cross out in front of your face.
I like that. Writing that down.
Yeah.
Even giving credit to Nate about that. All right, let's see what else we got about pitching. Hey, what do coaches mean when they talk about movement? Like, oh, you got to move well to pitch well. Guys that move well throw well. You know, guys that move well run the bases well. Like movement. You know, you got to be able to move. Like, what does movement mean? Why is movement so important? What are they talking about?
Oh man, you want to get on here for like another 4 hours, don't you? For me, because you're going to get.
Well, just remember, you're going to be talking to a lot of youth. So.
Yeah. And that's what I would say is for me, you're going to get a different answer out of a lot of people. So I think it's important for you people at home, like, ask this question to a lot of people. But for me, the answer that I would give is I just want to make sure it's synced up. Your body is working with itself. Like things are firing at the right time and that different limbs are working together in unison. So like you'll see it with sprinters, like when their right arm goes, their left leg goes in unison and then vice versa. Things will move like that. So I want to see all four limbs working together. Like a great example with a pitcher is like a guy with a really long arm. He's going to probably have a really long glove side, and chances are he's going to get really deep into his backside, and his leg is going to kick out a little bit away from his body because that makes all four limbs long. Now, another way that could happen is if a guy can get really deep in his backside, but he can also have a short arm action and just keep the ball in his glove longer to buy time for that shorter arm action. But then that glove side's got to be short too. So I want to make sure that all four limbs are working together and the pieces of the body are firing in sync and effectively within the kinetic chain. And that's different for everything. It's like with the pitch that we were just talking about with a thrower, that's a lot more similar to a swing, like him getting his foot down, firing his hip, that freeing up side, rotating that, and then his hands coming through. And there's different variations of that depending on pitch location. That's another story for another time. But and then with the sprinter, we talked about how they get out of the blocks and just where they're moving and what's firing at what time and how that front leg extends and goes down. So if I had to summarize all that crazy stuff that I said, is I would like to see somebody who's smooth and in rhythm and nice and fluid, and somebody who all their limbs look like they're functioning together.
Yes. Yeah, and I actually saw on Twitter, I don't know if you saw it, is in the last week or two, it was the lower half, so the legs of Usain Bolt. Did you see this?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so to touch on your point, he moves smooth, he moves fast, he also moves in unison. But if you break down the mechanics of the way he's running, his knees are going inward, and it just looks, when you still frame shot it, you're like, oh, that shouldn't he be just like this? No. So, and just to add to what you're saying and say, everyone is unique, so there's not one perfect model. But what you said, I think is perfect.
Yeah, that's something really important to note, is that Usain Bolt gets out of the blocks wrong. He moves poorly out of the blocks, and he has the fastest 100-meter time in the world by a significant margin. So, be careful when looking for a specific movement. I would say more so focus on how fluid it is and how much it's in sync with the rest of the body.
Yep, I completely agree. Because I'm sure your learning curve has been similar to mine and most people. When you learn a lot, you try to implement a lot, and you learn about what you just learned about. So with your point about not trying to look at one specific movement, how in your earlier years of coaching, when you're working with guys and you learned about these new movements and they were big aha moments, you're like, oh, get into your glute or front, all these things. How do you then balance, or how have you balanced, or how has your learning curve looked with learning all these things and then also learning, well, maybe that's not good for that guy, or not everyone does it that way? How's that been?
Yeah, I got two stories about my first couple of years coaching in junior college. The first one involved this drift kind of going down the mount, where I wanted guys, when they lifted their leg, to really kind of drift forward and extend, and then get into their, and then ride down the mount. So I had two guys in particular, just really pushing their center of mass forward and really getting them to drift and get going. And then a couple days later, both of those guys ended up pulling their hamstrings. And what I realized was, these guys don't drift because they have tight hammies. And if they drift down the mound, then that's a lot of stress and pressure, and their body's not able to handle that, so they're going to get hurt. So their body's actually chosen that delivery where they're staying back and more stationary and getting down because it's what their anatomy can handle. It's what their particular body can handle. And so that was idiots. You can't force movements on guys. You have to allow them, evolve the body and let that happen naturally. The other one was, I was really big on arm action for a year, where it was I wanted everybody, probably the same year, maybe the next year. I made a lot of mistakes that first year in junior college. I wanted to shorten up arm actions, and there was this ideal like scap loaded and then rotate and have it go on time. And the shorter the arm, the thought was the shorter the arm action, the less that can go wrong, and it'll load it and it'd be able to fire. Well, we had a couple guys where they came in and they worked on that, and they worked really, really hard, and they were able to get this arm action that we liked, which was great. And then one day they were playing long toss and kind of backed up. And I noticed that these guys had turned into what I called Frankenstein's monster, where 3 limbs were doing one thing and then one was doing something else. Where 3 limbs were super long and fluid, and then one was short and compact, and they couldn't get the ball to go where they wanted. They weren't throwing it very far, but we got the movement pattern that we wanted. And that was when I realized, oh man, and I don't know if I'm using this word right, but it's the way that I think of it. Your body is a dynamic system with a bunch of things working with each other. And if you just try to isolate one piece of it and take it away from the rest of the body, you're not going to have a lot of luck. You're not going to have a lot of luck with the whole system functioning. So like if you take out a piece of it, it's actually going to really, really deter the rest of it. And what you think might be beneficial on a particular limb, because you've seen that Tim Lincecum moves this way. That was the big one we were stealing from back then. Or
Me too.
Who else? Who's the guy right now that everybody wants to move like?
Is it still Chapman?
It's got to be Chapman. Yeah. So like Chapman does this. It's like, well, that's not Chapman. And if you just put his arm action in there, you're probably going to be in trouble and actually make this athlete worse. They'll lose feel, they'll lose command, they'll lose velocity because you're trying to make them do something that's foreign to their body.
Yep. So, I mean, with that said, since we're still a little bit on the topic of our pitchers, our players, how can players navigate all that? Because whether or not they have good, great, or terrible coaching, most coaching has a good intent, and a coach might have them really focus on one thing and they pick up on that. And all of a sudden they're like, wow, I think this is really it. How can a player navigate, or what is the advice you give to your players to navigate all this information?
I tell my players day one that their best coach is a radar gun and a string and a bullpen. If you're trying to throw harder and hit a spot, like that external feedback is going to be way better coach than I will be, because it's going to help us discover their anatomy. And so what I mean by external feedback is like outside results. Like if you do something, if you're 88 miles an hour and you do something and the gun goes to 93, keep doing that. If you're trying to get the ball down in the zone and you do something and the ball hits your target 4 times out of 5, keep doing that for command. And so it's my job as a coach to help these guys discover themselves and to help these guys discover what works for them. And I'm going to give them stuff that doesn't work. And that's fine, because this process, it's a failure-based process. That's how we learn. You fail your way to the top in life. You fail your way to the top in sports. The more failure that you get, the closer you get to the answer. So that's another thing, is like be patient, because that coach is stupid and he's teaching you X, Y, and Z. And it's like, well, first and foremost, I've been that coach. Like, I'm not afraid to admit it. And then like, second off, now you know what doesn't work. And now you can be more committed to the thing that does work because you've tried something else. And so I would say be very aware of what's happening outside. That's why the Rapsodo becomes very important in pitch with breaking balls. And we'll get to that later. But, because it tells us how the spin is. But like, be like, if your number's going up on the radar gun, do that. If you keep on hitting a spot, like do that, like keep on doing that, and really be your own best. It goes, the message in the beginning is it's on you. You're the athlete. It's your career. Be your own best coach. And so when you do something and it feels right and it's good, like know why you did that and own it, and be able to go from there. Now also understand this, and this is what I'll end on before getting to the next one. Your coaches are trying to help you, regardless of who it is or the type of information they have. They're all doing it because they're trying, they know what's best for you. And everything is a teach because it's worked for somebody. So be patient with them, understand they're human, and they're all trying to do what's best, but try what they're asking. If it works, great. If it doesn't, you don't have to say anything unless he asks. If somebody wants to know, like, I want to know if something doesn't work so I can move on from it. I don't have to harp on it. but be respectful and keep doing what you're doing. Nobody changes the guy that's 95 with a slider. Nobody jumps up to that guy and goes, "Oh, you need to do this." That's like, dude, you're 95 with a slider. Keep going. Like you're doing great. So be patient with your coaches and be your own best coach.
No, I think that's an important note. In addition, the delivery that a coach might be giving the information may not be to your liking, but I think you're exactly right that at the heart of it, they want to help. They want to make you better. Whether it's for selfish reasons, they want the team to be better, they want the success. At the end of the day, they're trying to help you. So, all right, and that leads into how we can continue to help our players with recruiting. So we got high school guys on here. They're actually probably the most tuned in ones typically, or ones that are maybe middle school. But let's talk a little bit about recruiting. You had, a lot of success, kind of some different roles, a lot of different unique situations in your schools that you coached at. So as a former college coach, what's just some good advice for high schoolers?
So number one is, what do you want? Figure out what you want. Because what I'll tell you is this, is like, I've been in the SEC. It's very high pressure. It's high stress. You have a bunch of first rounders coming at you, and there's a lot of things involved in that. And your feelings, they're whatever. Like, it's about going out and competing and finding a way. So if you need a little bit more interpersonal touch and you're not the best player and you're not the most talented, you will struggle probably. I can't speak for every team in the SEC, but the program that I was at, like, that's probably you were gonna struggle there. That being said, for the guys there that wanted that atmosphere and wanted to win and understood what it was about, like, they flourished. But like, know what you want. Like, do you want development from the standpoint of, like, do you want to throw harder? Is that important? Do you want a staff that's going to, is it win at all costs? Do you want one that's more about, everybody on the team and creating a team atmosphere? Do you want something that, like, there's give and take? How important is academics to you? Like, what do you want to do with your degree? Are you going to go to grad school? So your degree is kind of, and you got to figure that out. How important is playing time to you? And so once you figure those out, there's universities for you, provided that, you are okay with moving or you are okay looking around. If location's important, you're going to go local, then, you got to give up some other things on that list. But you figure out what you want, because I guarantee you there's a good fit for you out there. You just have to figure out what that is first. Okay. And if you jump on the first offer that comes around, I'll tell you this, it's not good for you or the coaching staff if it's not a good fit. Like, it's not good for you or the program. So really figure out what it is that you want, and then really pursue that and do your homework and do your research. Talk to coaching staffs, which is great. Visits, all that stuff's fantastic. I like the camps. I do like it when guys go to university camps. Sometimes it's just to kind of scratch an itch. Like, oh yeah, you get to put the uniform on and go through the camp for 3 days. And that's cool. That's a dream come true. Other times it's a reality of who's playing around you and seeing what the competition's like. Other times there's other coaches that are there that have a chance to see you play. But like, go out there and interact with coaching staffs. And then a big one I would say is, like, talk to players at the university that are having a good experience. Because if you talk to the ones having a negative experience, kind of try to read between the lines on that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk to the ones having a good experience and see if you identify with them. Like, are these the things that are important to me? And so I would say from a macro decision-making standpoint, find out what's important to you, make a list of the things you can and can't live with, and then go, like go and look and push. And then a lot of times you'll get some feedback like, this is the place I want to go. This is great. And then they're like, well, you need to be able to throw 3 pitches for a strike. So instead of you trying to work on throwing 92, that you need to work on command, or vice versa. Or places like, well, look, we only recruit 91 mile an hour arms and you're 88. Now okay, I got to go work on velo, and then you can figure it out from there.
Yep. If we just took the first handful of things that you had listed, if guys just took that list, because a lot of times you'll just hear, pick what's important to you and then go from there. But they're like, well, I don't know what I should be picking from. But I think you laid out a really good list with what level, what type of school, what type of coaching, what type of all this. If guys can just make that list and then just kind of circle some things, I think that's incredible advice. When this goes up on YouTube, I think that's where people should, high school players should push pause, write those things down on their little notepad, and go from there, because the rest of the stuff will just take off from there. But if you don't figure out that foundation, which is kind of the theme of what we're talking about with everything, if you don't figure out that foundation, it's hard to go somewhere.
Absolutely.
Next question. How would you differentiate between the levels? Like, I'm a guy that I just don't know where I stand as far as the level. What should I be looking at? Let's say grades aside. Let's say you have the grades to play at every level.
I think D1 is tough because D1, there's a lot of levels of D1. There's the difference between the SEC and every other conference in the country. With maybe not, and then there's a difference between the top layer ACC schools and every other team in the country. Like, that's one thing. And then you've got Power 5 schools that are kind of competitive, but not really. And then you've got your mid-majors that are extremely competitive, and then you've got your mid-majors that are just okay. And so, like, D1 is such a nebulous term. So if you want to go D1, chances are there's a school out for you. You just need to define what that is. But, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot to that. D2 is, in my experience, it's competitive baseball. You don't have as much pressure on you. There's not as much at stake. And what I love about D2, I felt like D2 was one of the pure forms of baseball because it's still a high level, but a majority, there's no not everybody's trying to get drafted and move on. So there's there's guys on that team who know this will be the end of their playing career and they'll be okay with it. And, they just show up every day to see their teammates be successful and be a part of something. So that's really cool. Division III, I can't really speak to because I've never worked at a D3. I will say one term that comes to mind when I think D3, and that is student athlete. That's what comes to my mind is student athlete. And so, that's a good fit for people. And then junior college, I'm biased to that because I worked there for 4-5 years and I love recruiting JC guys. If you think you have more left in the tank and you just need some time, if you think that if you need to play right now, junior college is the place for you. Playing time's huge. 100% of the guys that started junior college are freshmen or sophomores. 100% of the starters at a JC, they're either a freshman or a sophomore. Yeah. The other thing too is if your dad was a late bloomer or you were a 3-sport athlete and you feel like, you just want to focus on baseball and see where that goes. And you just want a little bit more time. I think junior college is phenomenal. And I think it's a great opportunity to, leave no doubt and really commit to that. And then that way you can put yourself in the best position to move on to a 4-year school for hopefully a significant scholarship at the place that you want to go.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that experience with the junior college level because it's been kind of a common theme when we talk about recruiting. When I've had conversations with guys, with players individually, or just on these shows with coaches, just kind of highlighting the junior college route because I think it's so not necessarily undervalued, but just more the unknown. Especially I tell guys like yourself, in Indiana, there's not too many junior colleges locally. You got to go a little bit further to find one, or maybe just the couple that are around, you're just, I'm not a fan of, and I really like this, but I think it's such an important route to at least explore and look into and find some more information out.
Yeah, absolutely. And something crazy, I worked at Santa Barbara City College and we had this thing that's called the track program or the TAC program. If you fulfilled that program, you could transfer to any UC in California, any UCLA, UC Berkeley, UC San Diego. You were guaranteed admission to those schools after finishing up at SBCC. So the academics at community college aren't necessarily, what the stigma is. Do a little bit of research. There's actually really, and they also don't put a stamp on your 4-year diploma graduated from Berkeley via Santa Barbara City College. You just get the same diploma that everybody else got after 4 years.
Yep. No, that's awesome. All right. Let's see. I want to make sure we have enough time for kind of all these things. So let's talk a little bit about coaching. And I said the theme with last week and this week has been communication. I'm going to keep pushing on it. So talk to me about communication, whether it's at a certain level, a certain story. It's communication.
It's got to be the most important thing. Your ability to communicate with your athletes and build trust. It's everything, because you want to grow. And in order to grow, that means you have to be different than you are day one. And in order to go through that, you got to go through shared experiences and events, and that involves communication. Take your time on it, I would say. A mistake that I made very, very early on as a coach was I was very impatient. And I wanted things in a month. Like if I wanted an adjustment to be made, I wanted it done in a month. If I wanted a guy to go up in velo, I wanted it now. I was looking. What drove me my first 2 years coaching junior college was searching for the magic bullet. It ended up being a beneficial thing because I ended up finding it motivated me to dive into a lot of information I wouldn't have otherwise. But that being said, there is no magic bullet. Like there was not like I was searching for something that didn't exist. And what I realized was the relationships I developed with the athlete, as well as just understanding them better, like put me in the best position to help them grow and develop long-term overall. I heard a quote recently from Tony Robbins. It was, people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 5 years. And I related to that, and that's kind of helped me out.
Love Tony Robbins quotes. That's the first Tony Robbins quote, and I love Tony Robbins. He's got so many good ones.
And so I think how that applies maybe to a season or a career is like, be patient over the bigger picture. It was something I listened to a podcast with Kobe Bryant in it a couple of years ago. And he mentioned how from day one, he was thinking about the basketball player he wanted to be when he was like 32, 33. And that he had this bigger picture involved, and that everything was a part of that. And that was really different from me, because I was just coach every season like it's your last, which I think there's benefits to that mentality. But at the same token, I do think it causes you to put a lot of stress and pressure on yourself to achieve things, where if you just take your foot off the accelerator and communicate more effectively, the athlete benefits and the team ends up achieving more. So what I would say is what that looks like in action is like, I don't give my athletes much, the pitchers, for about 2 weeks. And there's some guys, it drives them crazy, where a guy will throw a bullpen and he'll look at me and he'll go, "What do you think?" And I'll go, "It's your first bullpen." And he goes, "Yeah, what do you think I should do?" I go, I don't know. It's your first bullpen. What do you think? Like, I just saw you throw once and you're looking for me to make adjustments. Like, you could have been a bad day. You could have slept wrong. You know, like there's a whole bunch of things. I don't know how things sync up. There's no batter in the box. What am I going to make adjustments based off of something that's not even a game? Like, what are we talking about? And a lot of guys get it, but there's one or two guys that'll like freak out, where they'll be like, "No, you have to give me something." And I'm like, "Oh, sweet." Make a little note there and learn something about them there. But I like to take 2 weeks to really watch and take in as much as I can before I start formulating plans, and really try to understand the athlete so that I can communicate more effectively and he can do the same to me. The other flip side to that coin is I try to be very honest and transparent about me and who I am as a person. Very direct. I joke, but I do a phenomenal job. I feel I've learned to know when it's business and know when it's play. I'm very, very upfront with stuff. I'm going to tell you, you suck, because you suck. And I'd rather you know that you suck today so that in 2 weeks you'll be good and you can fix it, than me being like, "You're fine," and then in 2 weeks you suck in a game, and that's not good. Right now, that costs people their career. And so I'm going to be very upfront in the way that I communicate, and hopefully we'll be able to grow together and find that middle ground.
It's important that you note about kind of sitting back the first couple of weeks, because I had Steve Merriman on last week with the Colorado Rockies, their pitching coordinator, and he talked about the same thing, that he just kind of hands-off approach to start. And it's so popular now, and I'm in the same boat with doing assessments, learning about how the body moves and pitch assessments and just assessing all these things. But going back to communication, that kind of that nonverbal communication or assessment of just the player just how they do things, how they move, how they act, how they talk, how they perform. And if you go right in there jumping in and over communicate, then you might not ever allow yourself to understand that, hey, he's got a hell of a routine. And as soon as I mess that up, like the rest is just shot. But if you don't sit back and assess how that player is, that's super important.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. And then like what works for him? Like you got to figure out like, oh, I don't like it that you're listening to music before you get on the mound and throw your bullpen. Well, he's tight, man. That guy is tight. And him listening to music is the only way for him to relax and chill out before a game. And yeah, it wouldn't work for me, but like it works for that guy. And then like, I think the biggest thing too for me, kind of changing gears a little bit on this, is like making sure that if someone's doing something, they have a purpose or a reason behind it. They're not just doing it to do it, and trying to make more meaningful events and actions throughout the course of their day.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so before I veer off into our final question and give you a chance to let people know where to find you, I heard you talking about Bruce Lee and how you were diving into some of his stuff.
Yeah.
Talking about a consistent version of yourself. And I'm sure you could probably go off on a big tangent, but you're talking about being a consistent version of yourself as a coach. You'd gotten some feedback from some players that allowed you to learn some things, but you really dove into some Bruce Lee stuff. Talk to the audience about Bruce Lee.
It's that funny quote that's kind of going around, but something that I really took away from him is just being like water and just being malleable to kind of the situations and not being so held on and like tight and bearing down on certain things, but just take the place of the situation that's like around you and be adaptable to events and circumstances. Always maintain your consistency of who you are. Like you're still water, but you're able to adapt and adjust. And it kind of goes back to our previous conversation of like just sitting back and watching. Like I'm not going to change my personality. I'm not going to change who I am to an athlete, but I am going to cater my messaging or my timing or my stuff based on who that athlete is. So like I'm malleable, I'm adaptive. And something somebody pointed out to me last week was like, you can communicate with different people in different ways that's more effective. And I mean, I take that as a big compliment. I don't know if I do or not, but I just connect with people and talk. And I'm very respectful of the individual and what their circumstance is. So the be like water thing is a big one for me, where it's like, know who you are, know what your essence is, but don't be so hell-bent on certain things or don't hold on so tightly to certain ideas or certain events. Just be loose, be fluid, and be adaptable, and be yourself.
How deep does that Bruce Lee rabbit hole go?
It goes pretty deep. It goes pretty deep as far as, explosiveness and, the 1-inch punch and things of that nature. Like there's still a lot of things I have no idea what he's talking about, but I'm like, could like put a little asterisk by it and be like, okay, later on in my life when I have more experience and I failed more, I can go back to that and figure out what that means. But right now it's just kind of like, this is different. And that's good. I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So let me check my notes, make sure I don't have anything that I forgot or that I really want to touch on or that someone might have asked about. I guess before I get into the final topic, is there anything else that you want to add?
No.
Kind of your juices got flowing. You're like, oh, I really want to.
Just want to harp on that. If you're watching, be patient with yourself in this process. Baseball is a very competitive world. And I think when you start comparing yourself to others, if you have a high engine, you start comparing yourself to others, that's a recipe for frustration. But understand that like failure is a part of the process and that like this takes time. Like for you to fully develop who you're going to be in 3 years from now, whoever's watching this, who you're going to be in 3 years from now and who you are today is very different. And it takes a lot of failure and it takes a lot of patience to work through that and learn from those failures to be who you are. Yeah. So like I'm commending you from whoever this is for watching, because like a lot of guys aren't doing this and that's cool. But you're taking that initiative that we talked about in the beginning. You're taking it upon yourself to sit and watch this and grow and learn and hopefully add something to your career or to your skill sets so that you can get better. And that's ingredient number one.
Ownership, patience, and communication. If you took nothing else away, write those down.
Yeah.
All right. So this last topic, it's the segment I like to call the Twins Critique. So the Indiana Twins, the organization that I'm a part of, I like to kind of give a little bit of an explanation to our viewers if they're newer, and also kind of review to our guests, and then get the opportunity to hear a critique, get some feedback. I prepped you a little bit. You've had this you've had like an hour to think about this. What I like about this is it gives us a chance to let people know about our organization, but then also because we're always trying to evolve and get better, we can talk to some of the experts in different areas and get just some feedback on what we're doing and how can we continue to improve. So with that said, what are two big things with our organization, obviously the communication. Number one is that all of our coaches and our instructors and even our players are speaking the same language, whether it's through certifications, sharing videos, coaches clinics that we have, just constant communication. We are trying to have the same message from our 8-year-olds to our returning college guys that get drafted. So they're all speaking the same language. People really appreciate that. And the second thing is we're all inclusive as far as if it's baseball, we got it. If it's hitting and pitching and performance training for 20 weeks of our off-season program, that is included in the cost of your fees. It's relative to every other cost in the state of Indiana that I know of as far as cost of travel baseball. And you get all that 20 weeks hitting, pitching, performance training. Within that 20 weeks, you also get a catching clinic. That's multiple weeks. You get base running, you get infield, you get outfield, you get mental training every week. In addition to your practices and your tournaments and your jerseys, it's all included because we value that so much. So with all that said, I know we don't do it all right. We probably don't schedule it the best. There's things that we probably need to do more of and less of. What's your best advice from what you've heard or what you're just thinking out loud about what we can do?
Yeah, first and foremost, you got to understand I grew up, born and raised in Southern California. So the value of what you're getting is ridiculous. Like, I don't understand how you function or pay your bills, or that's amazing. So like, if I'm in your area, like, I am going to sign up for that. And then I'm going to brag on you a little bit because it sounds better coming from me than you. But like, the value of instruction and information that this guy has is unbelievable. Like, this guy's Driveline certified, first person to do it. Talks with he's going to have Lance Wheeler on here. Understands the Texas Baseball Ranch, like what they're teaching, and like, there's no stone left unturned. So the fact that you have that value and that amount of stuff going on, and then the quality of instruction combined with that, like, that's ridiculous. Like, if you don't take advantage of this, you're stupid. That's awesome.
Appreciate it.
One thing, I wouldn't necessarily call it a critique because I haven't seen it in action, but I would ask you this: is you have a shared language. What type of depth does that have as you go up? Like, is there an opportunity for you to get like deeper inside the onion as you go up, or is it just kind of a generic shared language and you're just going to keep things very surface area?
So here's kind of the evolution of it. It started as, hey, we've got an organization. Most organizations are very divided. They have the name and that's about it. So we want to be speaking the same language. The frustration on our end was we're trying to do all these different things and have everyone speak the same thing. So over the last couple of years, we've spent a lot more time devoting towards coach education, instructor education. Instructors we would usually do because just smaller amount of group of people. But when we've got about 50 coaches, to get everyone in the same room, we would do calls, we would do in-person meetings. This year, we ended up basically just cutting up as much video that we could find, or things that we've taught. We're starting to create documents. So we're kind of in the infancy of really taking off with this coaches certification that we started this year. So that's kind of where we are now. So it's all level one just to get it all built out, but that's where we are right now.
Gotcha. Yeah, I guess that would be my challenge. Not, the fact that you're going to have a shared language is awesome. That's phenomenal. That's something that I've learned watching Twitter, is that on the pitching standpoint, two guys will get into an argument about something and they're using the same word to describe two different things. And I actually think that's where a majority of the beef comes in, disagreements come, is when people don't take the time to learn something else. So the fact that you're hammering that out with a shared language, that's good. I guess, yeah, just the depth of it, like, as you guys get older, maybe challenge them to go a little bit deeper in the onion. But that's really all I got. Yeah, that's all I got.
Let me pick your brain from, whether it's the different successful organizations you've been with from the college levels or even the pro ranks now, what are some things you've seen as far as like a top-down approach where these guys are really doing a good job of educating? And kind of to your point about the levels, how are they kind of making it into levels?
As far as like professional goes, or just any?
Just, I mean, running an organization, a successful organization, and being able to speak the same language. I know the Blue Jays are talking about that. Yeah, they giving you kind of like a base level and then like kind of a level 2, or like how have you seen it done really well?
So we have, I'll just say as far as the language goes, is like each department has like a generalized language that's shared with everybody. And then within the department, you can get into the weeds as far as, going into specifics about different phases of something or different pieces of something. And so what that does is like, there's an overall language which you can share interdepartment, like throughout the whole organization, regardless of who you see. If I talk about X and X, they'll know exactly what I'm saying. And then within your specific, like pitching or hitting department or whatever, like then there's the intricacies of it. And that's all kind of the same language. So I would say that. As far as college goes, the best programs I've seen have had the most intense falls, where standards and expectations and things are explained in the fall, and then they're really hammered home in the fall. And then by the time the season gets there, you just play games and you're all on the same page. But the fall it's tough, it's demanding, it's a grind. But what the organization is doing is they're ruling out expectations, they're ruling out, everything. They're ruling out rules, they're putting out consequences to those, and they're telling you, what your responsibility is and how to master that. And it's rough, but they do it early so that they can have success late.
Well, that's really good feedback, because sometimes we're trying to catch our tail and doing things a little bit later than we should have. So I appreciate that feedback. All right, where can people find you, Demetre?
I'm on Twitter, at Coach Kokoris. So just at Coach, and then the last name's Kokoris. And if you want to send me an email with any questions, I would love that. It's just my name, Demetre.Kokoris@bluejays.com. So DEMETRE.KOKORIS@bluejays.com. And yes, the first day of school in elementary school was always brutal on my teaching.
That's perfect. All right. Well, I don't have anything else, I don't think. So I'll have you stay on for just a minute after I end this. And I appreciate it. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in. And this will be cut up, put on YouTube. It'll have all timestamps so you can kind of skip around to the times and see what you want to look at. And we appreciate it. So thank you very much.